A pleasure to be joined, and I mentioned earlier, he goes on YouTube, and you can check him out. IngravenVids, and he's kind enough to join us. I was watching you last night. It's a pleasure to have you here. How's everything? I assume you're in Baltimore. Is that right?
No. I'm originally from Maryland, but I'm down in Miami right now.
Are you really? Mm-hmm. So you're a smart guy. You got out of the cold weather and you went down there to the Florida sunshine.
I hate the cold weather with a passion. Don't like it at all.
All right, tell me. I want to ask you, because everybody and his brother has weighed in. You follow this team religiously. It's what you do for a living.
Right.
What were your thoughts? Because I was watching you last night talking about Marcus Peters and what went on, who he was talking to. Was he questioning the head coach? Didn't appear to be a coordinator or another coach. What were your thoughts? Let's start first with John Harbaugh's decision not to kick the field goal with 4 minutes left in the game.
I was initially live while it was happening. I was 50-50 on it. Because I'm like, all right, you just had this really long drive. You haven't scored any points in the second half. You made it all the way down to the goal line. You want to go for it. I get it. But then at the same time, I was thinking, but you do want to take the points too, because the 3 is pretty much a guaranteed 3. We know crazy things have happened, but it's Justin Tucker. You're right there. It's pretty much a guaranteed 3. And then one of my guys texted me. He texted me and he was like, why didn't they just take the points? And I told him the same thing. I was like, I was 50-50 on it. But he was like, hey, if they kick the 3, you take the points there. You take it every time. Because if you kick the 3, Buffalo has to beat you with a touchdown. They can't beat you with a field goal. Then you get an opportunity to get the ball back again. So thinking about it from that angle, I was like, they should have definitely taken the 3 then.
Yeah, I was just in shock, and we talked about it here yesterday at length. We had Brian Billick, former Super Bowl winning head coach. He joins us every single week to talk about the NFL, and he wasn't going to sit there and beat up John Harbaugh, because Harbaugh's had tremendous success. I imagine that Harbaugh, because of all his success, he gets a little extra rope in Baltimore than maybe some other coaches. Is that fair?
Yeah, a whole lot. Plenty.
Okay. Marcus Peters, what was that all about? Did you ever find out?
I've heard different things. We haven't heard anything directly from John Harbaugh, from Marcus Peters. But I'm thinking it could be a couple of different things. I saw one fan that said that he was at the game to where he said that when John Harbaugh didn't let the offense just take the 3, that's when Marcus Peters chased him down and started jawing at him. It also could have been Marcus Peters' frustration with Odafe Away on that final play. Not on the final play, but on the play where the defense seemed to be letting the offense score, letting the Bills offense score. But Odafe Away went for that strip. He tried to force the fumble, and then it ended up tackling the running back. And the Ravens, they didn't have any timeouts left, so the game essentially ended there. And that set the Bills up to kick a field goal with once time expired. So I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I just hope that the whole thing can get cleared up. Because one thing that I was thinking about, and we mentioned it in the video that you spoke of, the Marcus Peters video, is that I don't see Marcus Peters getting upset at John Harbaugh. I don't see that as just this thing that happened out of the blue, because we haven't seen a Ravens player get that upset with John Harbaugh in a long time. And I can't even recall the last time that happened. But Marcus Peters and we know Marcus Peters, he's somebody that he displays his emotions all the time. And for him to have not gotten this upset at John Harbaugh like that, to ever have a blow up like that, I think that was significant. So, I mean, hopefully nothing happens with this in the future. Hopefully it doesn't keep any feathers ruffled. But it's just one of those things we'll have to wait and see.
All right, let me ask you. Here in Cincinnati, like in Baltimore, a 2-2 start. The argument can certainly be made that the Bengals could be 4-0, certainly 3-1, if they don't blow a point after touchdown, but one of the best kickers in the league in the season opener against Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
The argument can be made, the Ravens, had they not blown that game against Miami, where they're up 35-14 at home, right? So they could be 3-1. But look, both of them are 2-2. The vibe here in Cincinnati is things are starting to get going. You started 0-2, gave up 13 sacks. Now in the last 2 games, you've only given up 3 sacks. You beat the Jets. The Jets aren't bad, but they're not great. And then you just demolish Miami. What's the vibe on the 2-2 Ravens right now?
Not finishing at home. And with this game being at home again, it's like you just don't know what to expect. I remember while we were watching the Bills game, Ravens jumped out to a 20-3 lead. And I know a lot of Ravens fans were excited, but I was saying, hey, I can't be too excited right now because we've seen what happened. We saw what happened against the Miami Dolphins just a few weeks ago at M&T Bank Stadium, where Ravens had an even bigger lead, and the whole thing just ended up collapsing. So we saw, obviously, they collapsed again against the Buffalo Bills. I think the Ravens right now are still trying to figure out who they are. I think the Ravens right now are still trying to figure out what their identity is and who they're going to be this football season. My thing was going into the season, I said we won't really know who teams are until after like the first 4 to 5 weeks. And I still don't think the Ravens really know who they are completely yet. And it still is early on in the season, but they're looking to see who they're going to be this year. And hopefully the collapses, they won't continue. I think a big thing has been the back and forth, the shakiness of the defense. But I think something else that's been getting overlooked a lot is the Ravens offense late in games in the second half. And then especially in the fourth quarter, they just have not been scoring points. They'll get off to these hot starts early on in the game. They'll rack up all these points, but then come in the second half and come late in the fourth quarter, they just stop scoring. And that's obviously that's not good enough. Especially when you go against teams that are just a couple of big plays away and boom, they're right back in it. And now with them going against the Cincinnati Bengals, Bengals, they're always looking for that big play. They're always looking for that big strike. And when I watched them play against the Dolphins last Thursday, the Dolphins were holding them down for a while. The Bengals offense, it was quiet for a while. Then all of a sudden, T. Higgins, he gets that big touchdown. And then late, Jamar Chase, he gets the big catch too. And so the Bengals they're just one big strike away. So Ravens, they're going to need to make sure that they keep scoring. But that's the vibe right now, that they're just still figuring things out.
I got to ask you, I got to believe part of the reason, and you touched on a couple of them, but, not having J.K. Dobbins, and he's near and dear to our hearts here in the Buckeye State. He was such a great player and a great competitor. When he played at Ohio State, had the big rookie year, got hurt, comes back early. I think most people feel like he's not at 100% yet. But, when you don't have, and you mentioned identity, and I think that's such an important thing for any team. Who are you? What do you want to be? The Ravens traditionally, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, they've had this bruising defense. They have Lamar Jackson, who can do all kinds of things, but then when they have to turn around and hand the ball off, generally they've been very good at that through the years, generally speaking. Do you see that running game? And I don't mean the Lamar Jackson part of the running game. I'm talking about whoever they put back there. Do you see that starting to a big part of who they want to be? Or do you think they're kind of saying, we don't know if Dobbins is going to come back, we got another guy hurt, maybe it's all Lamar all the time?
That's the rough part about it, because you would hope that it doesn't have to be all Lamar all the time. But Lamar Jackson has been the Baltimore Ravens run game. They have just not gotten much of anything out of anybody else. This was just week 4, and the first rushing touchdown from somebody other than Lamar just happened with J.K. Dobbins. So the running game has just, and it's weird, especially as Ravens fans, you watch this team, and like you said, they've built their identity, their culture over the years has been running the ball, playing good defense. In this season, overall, both of those things have been a big struggle for the Baltimore Ravens. But particularly with the run game, they have had their fair share of injuries. Gus Edwards, he is supposed to start practicing this week, so they should get him back over the next couple of weeks. J.K. Dobbins, like you mentioned, he just returned. And he's only played last week and this past week, so he's still getting in the flow of things. Justice Hill, who had been their best runner, he got an injury this
Yep.
past Sunday against the Bills. So now he'll be out for maybe a couple of weeks. So it's like they haven't been able to run the ball, but they haven't had consistency at the running back position either. So it's been a lot of different things that all combine into just a mess. So the running game hasn't been nearly what it used to be, and it hasn't been close to what we're used to as Ravens fans.
All right, walk me through for Bengals fans. You know, the first 2 weeks they're facing Watt, Cameron Hayward, that Highsmith, that whole pass rushing group. Week 2, Parsons and, Lawrence. And, I mean, these guys are all over the place, and they give up 13 sacks. Now, the next 2 weeks, they haven't faced that dominant pass rushers in the Jets and the Dolphins. What has the pass rush been like for the Ravens so far this year?
Oh, man, it's been bad. It's been really bad. They went into this season with just Justin Houston and Odafe Away as their only outside linebackers, the only healthy pass rushers. Over the course of these 4 weeks, they've lost Steven Means, who they had him on the practice squad, then they called him up to the active roster. He literally played on the first play that he played in a game. He got hurt, torn Achilles, lost for the season. Justin Houston, who had been probably their best pass rusher and their most productive pass rusher this year, even though the production has still been low, they lost him last week against the Patriots early in the first quarter to a groin injury. So he missed this past game. We won't know until tomorrow when they practice again if he'll start being ready for this next game. Odafe Away, their first-round pick from last year, he's been getting pressure, but the production hasn't been there as far as closing the sacks. He's missed a lot of opportunities. He did get his first sack against Josh Allen this past game, but the pass rush has just been rough. The Ravens did just sign Jason Pierre-Paul last week, and he played in this game like right away. And they needed him to be Superman, but he couldn't be. He wasn't. And the pass rush has been such a big issue. They did draft David Ajabo, but of course at his pro day, he suffered that Achilles injury, so we don't know when he'll be back. I feel like anything that the Ravens could possibly get out of him this year should be considered a bonus. Tyus Bowser, who last year, literally in the last game of the season against the Steelers, he tore his Achilles. So that messed him up for this year, but he should be coming off of the PUP list hopefully this week so they can get some reinforcements. But overall, the pass rush has just been really, really bad. They played the Jets in week 1. And actually, I take it back to the preseason. In the preseason, the Ravens pass rush, it looked really good, and they were really getting home. And a lot of us were thinking, okay, wait a minute, this looks good. It's the preseason, but it's better to have a good pass rush in the preseason than a bad one because you have to start somewhere. So then in week 1 against Joe Flacco and the Jets, the pass rushes still looked good, and we were like, all right, let's go. Ravens are getting after it. But then in the Dolphins, the pass rush lasted for maybe a quarter, and then after that, it was non-existent. And then in week 3 against the Patriots, it was on and off, mostly off. But then against the Bills, it was just pretty much all the way off. They had a couple of flashes here and there, but it's been pretty bad. So that has been a big part, in my opinion, of the Ravens, the lack of success that they've had on defense. A big part of it has been just the lack of pass rush. And as you know, both on both sides of the ball, a good pass rush, it changes everything.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Let me ask you this before I let you go. And I know it's your opinion, but it's based on a lot of other people and the way they look at it. The Bengals for a long time were the laughing stock of the AFC North. For whatever reason, even when they've had some bad teams, they've pulled off some pretty big upsets against the Ravens through the years, and they obviously dominated them last year, but Lamar only played the first game.
Right.
How do people view the Bengals now in Baltimore?
I think people have no choice but to respect the Bengals because I know a lot of people, they don't like the Bengals. They have this nasty taste in their mouth, and they're like, oh, man, those are the little brothers of the AFC North. But you have to respect what the Bengals did, because in Joe Burrow, his first full year starting, they made it all the way to the Super Bowl. All the way to the Super Bowl. And that's big. That's huge. And he does have a nice set of weapons over there. Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, Mr. 4th and 12, and then T. Higgins, of course, as well. And then some familiar faces like Hayden Hurst, former first-round pick of the Baltimore Ravens. And then, of course, Joe Mixon as well. But I think with a lot of Ravens fans, I think one of the biggest things now, especially based off of last year when Joe Burrow threw over 500 yards, a lot of Ravens fans just want to see, like, all right, what are the Bengals going to do against a completely healthy Ravens, even though they're not completely healthy, but a much more healthy Ravens team. So that's going to be a big task for both teams going into this game, just to see how things are when the playing field is a little bit more even. But as far as last year, a lot of Ravens fans are looking at that like, yeah, the Bengals, they dominated the Ravens and Ravens were all beat up. But, I mean, the way I looked at it, you can't blame the Bengals for putting up all those points. Like, it's a football game. You're not going to go into the game and be like, all right, well, this team is injured, so we're going to take it easy on them. No, you're going to try to rack up a bunch of points because you are trying to win the game. So now, yeah, it's up to the Ravens to prove, like, all right, last year was last year, and this year, let's see what they've got.
All right. You have any prediction for the game? What do you think? You in the prediction business at all? Come on now. Look, I mean, come on.
I'm worried about this one because it is at home. Oh, yeah, for sure, because it is at home. We know the Ravens are 0-2 at home. And it's been the same way that they've played at home this year. Big leads, then big collapses. And they may be without Rashad Bateman, who is their number one receiver. So if they're without Rashad Bateman, we saw last week, Rashad Bateman, he had a rough game. Initially, he had a couple of drops, and then he got a foot injury. He was in a walking boot after the game. And the Bills made sure they just completely took out Mark Andrews from the game. He had like 2 catches for, I think, 15 yards. So he got removed from the game completely. And that forced the Ravens to be like, all right, who else is going to step up? And they didn't get it done. So this game does concern me. I expect it to be one of those AFC North stressful football games like it usually is. So we'll see how it goes.
All right. I can't thank you enough for your time, young man.
Oh, yeah,
You've been awesome. And maybe we'll get back together on Monday after a late Sunday night and get your thoughts of the way this whole thing goes down.
Hey, it should be fun. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
All righty. All the best to you and your family, and great having them on here today. I mean, look, that's what the show's all about at the end of the day here, as we talk about. We're going to have Zim Hude coming up here in a minute.
I like Zim.
Yeah, he's the best. Mm-hmm. I mean, we love him. He's a regular on the program. But thank you again, and have a great rest of your day. Sure. So we're going to take a time out.